Rich millionaire buys a necklace for his mistress, but his pregnant wife's bold move stuns everyone. In a realm of glittering wealth and carefully cultivated glamour, one secret gift threatens to unravel every facade. Raymond Black, a self-made millionaire lauded for his sharp instincts and impeccable public image, is hiding a tangled web of personal desires. His pregnant wife, Isabel, remains blissfully unaware of the cracks forming in their perfect marriage until a single extravagant purchase for another woman sets events spiraling beyond control. When whispers of a priceless necklace reach Isabel's ears, she steels herself for a confrontation that will prove she's far from a timid victim. In a bold move that leaves the city's elite speechless, she seizes her own destiny and changes everyone's fate. Isabel Carter grew up in a small, close-knit town outside Philadelphia, nurtured by modest but devoted parents who valued honesty above all. Even as a teenager, she displayed a quiet determination that glowed under her reserved demeanor. By the time she enrolled in college, she'd gained acceptance to a competitive business program, setting her sights on forging a steady, meaningful career. Meeting Raymond Black at a professional networking event felt like destiny. He was the keynote speaker, a young, dashing entrepreneur whose startup in the tech industry had just caught the eye of major investors. Her curiosity was piqued by the confidence in his smile, an aura of success that enthralled everyone else in the room. Later that evening, as though guided by fate, they found themselves talking by the buffet, discussing everything from microchip supply chains to philanthropic dreams. Their courtship happened in a whirlwind. Raymond was the type to surprise her with elaborate gestures, private helicopter rides over scenic countrysides, candlelit dinners in five-star restaurants, bouquets of lilies that arrived at her office just because it was Monday. Isabel, initially overwhelmed, soon found herself intoxicated by the romance of it all. By the end of that year they were engaged, and her small hometown roared with pride at the local girl who'd snagged a budding millionaire. Over time, Raymond's empire, Blackstone Innovations, ballooned. He dabbled in real estate, stock acquisitions, and philanthropic ventures, earning him the label of a modern Renaissance man in the tabloids. Isabel stood beside him, quietly supportive, choosing not to overshadow her husband's achievements. She built her own career in project management at a reputable firm, but her name never made the gossip columns the way his did. At first, their marriage felt unbreakable. They were a team. He, the visionary risk-taker, she, the stable anchor who kept his life grounded. However, the higher they climbed in society, the more heavily social pressures weighed on them. Red carpet events, high-stakes fundraising galas, mingling with billionaires sometimes. Isabel yearned for simpler times. In hushed conversations, she confessed feeling out of place among the champagne-laden soirees. Raymond would kiss her forehead and assure her she was perfect as she was, but the glittery nights continued. Not long after their 5th anniversary, Isabel discovered she was pregnant. Though it came as a surprise, both were overjoyed, at least initially. She imagined their home filling with the joyful chaos of a child's laughter. Yet, as her belly grew, she noticed a subtle distance in Raymond. His phone buzzed more often. He worked longer hours. His eyes held a restless flicker. She couldn't interpret. She told herself it was the added weight of fatherhood looming on the horizon. Little did Isabel know, the ache of her husband's growing detachment was not a figment of her imagination. Far from the warmth of her love, an entirely different fire had begun to burn, one that glimmered in the reflection of a dazzling necklace, destined for someone else's neck. And that secret, once unveiled, would throw them both into a tempest far more perilous than any they'd ever faced. Raymond Black wasn't always the picture-perfect husband that society's magazines loved to flaunt. Yes, he adored Isabel, at least. He believed he did. But he also thrived on adrenaline, on the thrill of conquest. whether in business or beyond. In his world of deals and expansions, securing the next big win was an obsession. Sometimes that hunger spilled outside the bounds of business. He met Adrienne Levant during a high-profile charity auction, an event organized by a mutual friend to raise funds for underprivileged children's education. Adrienne was introduced as a consultant specializing in luxury brand strategy, though rumor had it she doubled as a socialite known for forging valuable connections with aristocrats and celebrities. The moment Raymond saw her, a spark lit in his eyes. With her jet-black hair, regal posture, and an aura that exuded confidence, Adrienne could command an entire room's attention without uttering a single word. Their first interaction was brief, a courtesy handshake, a polite exchange about philanthropic interests. But Adrienne's touch lingered a fraction too long. Her gaze flicked over him like a connoisseur assessing fine art. Raymond felt an electric jolt, the whisper of danger that ignited his old impulses. At the end of the auction, she walked away with a wink that sent a shiver down his spine. Over the next few weeks, they crossed paths often too often to be mere coincidence. At a venture capital summit, Adrienne was there, exchanging pleasantries with influential investors. At a black tie gala, she appeared again, offering a sly smile as they passed each other. A chance meeting at a cocktail lounge led to their first real conversation, buoyed by top-shelf liquor and the hush of a secluded corner table. That night, they discovered a shared fascination with the synergy between wealth and power, how a carefully chosen piece of jewelry could transform a woman's image, how public perception could be shaped with a single strategic move. Raymond told himself it was harmless flirtation. He had no intention of betraying his pregnant wife. Yet, each encounter with Adrienne teased his desire for excitement. The more taboo it felt, the more it thrilled him. And Adrienne, ever the tactician, recognized his vulnerability, skillfully orchestrating further meetings that teetered on the boundary between business networking and intimate tryst. One balmy evening, after an exclusive dinner with clients, Raymond found himself sharing a private driver with Adrienne. The conversation that started with branding strategies soon drifted into personal terrain. She laughed softly, placing a hand on his arm, mentioning how she admired his ambition. In that moment, her perfume swirled around him, a heady mix of jasmine and promise. When they parted ways at her hotel, she pressed a note into his palm, her private phone number. "In case you need more conversation," she whispered. The next morning, guilt plagued him, but also a strange elation. Adrienne was a catalyst for a side of him that had been dormant, a man not just shaped by corporate suits and fatherly responsibilities. He told himself it was nothing serious, just a spark to break the monotony, a secret to amuse the corner of his life that felt overshadowed by fatherhood's demands. He never imagined that secret would soon revolve around a shimmering piece of jewelry, and that Isabel, the loyal wife carrying his child, would be forced to confront the worst of his betrayals in the most public way possible. As Isabel's pregnancy progressed, she tried hard to maintain a sense of normalcy. She continued part-time at her project management job, balancing spreadsheets and scheduling client meetings around her growing physical limitations. Her colleagues offered congratulations and helpful gestures, but she often found herself daydreaming about quiet evenings with Raymond, moments to share the wonder of their coming child. Yet Raymond's absences multiplied. He started leaving the penthouse early and coming home well past dinner, sometimes stinking of expensive cologne that wasn't his usual brand. Isabel tried to be understanding. He was busy scaling up a new acquisition within Blackstone Innovations, or so he claimed, but a cold tension settled in her stomach whenever he brushed off her attempts to discuss parenting plans. One Thursday evening, Isabel arrived home from a prenatal checkup to find a bank notification in her email. Their joint account reflected a significant withdrawal labeled simply Estate Jewelers, LLC. Frowning, she clicked to see the sum, an eye-watering $20,000. A swirl of confusion. We haven't talked about any big purchases, she thought. Despite their wealth, they usually consulted each other on large spending decisions, especially with a baby on the way. When Raymond returned that night, she gently questioned him. He tossed his coat aside, his expression guarded. "I purchased something for an upcoming charity auction," he lied smoothly. "A donation to help raise funds. You know how these events are." She tried to read his eyes. 20,000? That's quite a donation. Are you sure you want to spend that much right now? He forced a laugh, leaning in to kiss her cheek. "Don't worry, it's for a good cause. Besides, we can afford it. Everything's under control." His phone buzzed, and he quickly fished it out, walking away before she could press further. A hollow feeling settled in Isabel's chest, but she forced herself to trust him. They were a team, after all. He wouldn't lie to me. She placed a hand on her belly, murmuring a silent reassurance to her unborn baby. Across town that same evening, Adrienne Levant admired the glint of a custom-designed necklace, glistening in velvet packaging emeralds, circled by diamonds set in white gold. She smirked at the memory of Raymond's fidgety excitement when placing the order. Something truly stunning, he'd said to the jeweler, for someone who deserves the best. She recalled how he slipped away from her during a lunch date to take a phone call, presumably from his wife, and how he returned looking conflicted yet thrillingly alive. Adrienne ran a fingertip across the emerald centerpiece, her heart fluttering with satisfaction. She had reeled in powerful men before, but none who seemed as enthralled by the chase as Raymond. The necklace was proof of her success, a shimmering testament to the control she wielded behind closed doors. She thought back to how she'd carefully manipulated their encounters, always hinting that she wasn't the type to settle for cheap trinkets or half-hearted attention. He'd taken the bait. Soon, Adrienne mused, she would wear this masterpiece around her neck at a lavish event, turning heads, letting the world guess about its origins. Meanwhile, Isabel remained far from her mind, just another clueless wife, overshadowed by her husband's unstoppable ambition. Adrienne had no inkling that her victory would soon become the spark of a scandal that would shake the city's elite to its very core. Several days later, Isabel received a call from an old friend named Claudine Rise, a fashion journalist known for her relentless curiosity. Claudine's hushed tone alerted Isabel that something serious was brewing. "Can we meet for coffee, Belle?" she asked. "I came across something that might be important for you to know." Wary but curious, Isabel agreed, meeting Claudine at a discreet cafe near Central Park. Over latte foam and hushed conversation, Claudine revealed that she'd been assigned a piece on luxury jewelers catering to high-profile clients. While researching, she'd uncovered a lead, suggesting Raymond Black had made a substantial purchase, apparently not for any public donation or philanthropic cause, but rumored to be a personal gift. Claudine's sources were hush-hush, but well-connected. A boutique gemologist even described the piece, an emerald diamond necklace with a custom engraving, though the exact wording was unknown. Tension tightened around Isabel's chest as she recalled the suspicious withdrawal from their joint account. She forced a calm expression, though her mind whirled. "Are you certain it's for personal use?" she asked, voice trembling slightly. Claudine nodded gravely. It didn't seem like something for an auction or fundraiser. The jeweler specifically noted it was a personalized commission, and I'm not sure you'd want to see your name on it. Word is, someone else's initials might be involved. A cold flush crept over Isabel's cheeks. She clenched her teacup, knuckles whitening, but forced herself to remain poised. "Thank you for telling me," she managed. "I need some time to process this." They parted ways with Claudine's eyes full of sympathetic concern. That afternoon, Isabel raced home, mind churning. If the necklace was real, Why had Raymond lied about it being for a charity donation? Who was it truly for? The possibility that it might be a gift for a mistress gnawed at her. She tried calling Raymond, but he was in a meeting, according to his assistant. Overwrought, she sank onto the living room sofa, stroking her belly as if to calm the baby and herself. Meanwhile, Raymond sat in an upper-floor conference room at Blackstone Innovations, feigning interest in charts about foreign market expansions. His phone vibrated incessantly with Isabel's name on the screen, spiking his guilt. Across the table, Adrienne sent him a subtle smirk. She had weaseled her way into the meeting under the guise of branding counsel, ensuring they shared the same space. After the meeting, he stepped out, checking messages. Isabel had left a voicemail, her voice trembling, requesting him to come home early. Anxiety tightened in his gut. Adrienne's voice suddenly whispered in his ear, "Everything all right, Raymond?" He turned, startled. She rested a hand on his shoulder, an unspoken invitation in her gaze. "It's fine," he lied, shoving the phone into his pocket. "Work stuff." Deep down, he sensed the precariousness of his predicament. The necklace had arrived a day ago, locked in his private office drawer. Adrienne was pressing for a proper unveiling, perhaps at an upcoming gala. Isabel, increasingly suspicious, was pressing for answers. Something had to give. That evening, he planned to finally come clean about the necklace, some version of it anyway. He'd spin a partial truth, hoping to soothe Isabel's alarm, but fate, as it often does, had other plans. And the next time that emerald necklace saw the light of day, it would be under circumstances that no one could have anticipated. Torn between dread and determination, Isabel confronted Raymond the moment he stepped into the penthouse. She'd spent the afternoon rehearsing her words, but now, face to face, they tumbled out unevenly. "Ray, I know you didn't buy that necklace for charity. Tell me the truth." He paused in the foyer, eyes flicking to the corner where their half-packed hospital bag for the baby sat. The weight of her accusation pinned him in place. "What do you mean?" He tried, voice feigning innocence, but she cut him off. "I spoke to Claudine. She's investigating a story about jewelers. There's a rumor you commissioned a custom emerald necklace with an engraving. You withdrew 20,000 from our account. So don't feed me any more lies." Raymond's heart hammered. Every muscle in his body screamed to deny, deflect, but the look on Isabel's face, equal parts heartbreak and fury, stopped him cold. I bought it as a personal gift, yes," he admitted carefully. "For a business associate." Her expression darkened at the last words, so he rushed on. "It's not what you think. She helped me secure a big contract. It was a gesture of gratitude. Maybe it was impulsive. I'm sorry." Isabel held his gaze, searching for any glimmer of truth. "A gesture of gratitude? We're married, expecting a child, and you're buying another woman a necklace worth thousands? Don't you see how this looks?" He ran a hand through his hair, frustration mounting. "Look, I might have made a mistake, but it's not an affair. Let's talk this out calmly." She stepped back, tears burning in her eyes. "Calmly? Do you have any idea how humiliating this is? People are whispering behind my back. My friend found out about your secret purchase before I did." Her voice cracked. "Ray, I need honesty. Is there more to your relationship with this associate?" For a fleeting moment, the entire charade threatened to unravel. Raymond nearly confessed all of it Adrienne's name, their clandestine dinners, the stolen kisses that ignited a craving he couldn't explain. But fear overtook him. Fear of losing Isabel, fear of scandal that could sabotage his business deals, fear of looking small and pathetic. Instead, he bent the truth again. "She's just an important contact I wanted to thank. I swear it's nothing else." Isabel clenched her jaw, arms wrapping protectively around her belly. The sting of betrayal was evident, though she wanted so desperately to believe him. For the baby's sake, for their marriage. Then return it, she challenged. Return the necklace if it's nothing more than a misguided gift. His stomach sank. Adrian had the necklace now, presumably. Or it was at the office. Or he forced a calm he didn't feel. I can't. It's already delivered. It would be rude to ask for it back. Her laugh was hollow. Rude, right. Because how it looks to her matters more than how it looks to me, your pregnant wife. She paused, a wave of exhaustion crossing her face. I can't deal with this right now. Sleep in the guest room until you figure out whose feelings you care about more. And with that she turned, disappearing into the hallway. Raymond stood rooted, pangs of guilt and panic swirling. He never felt so helpless. Yet a small, twisted corner of his mind still yearned for Adrienne's seductive presence. He told himself he was trapped in a labyrinth of his own making. What he didn't realize was that Isabel, far stronger than he ever gave her credit for, was about to blaze a trail out of that labyrinth, leaving devastation and a measure of victory in her wake. Morning arrived with a grey drizzle that matched the somber mood within the penthouse. Isabel awoke drained from a restless night, but also oddly resolute. She phoned her mother, Anne Carter, confiding the bare bones of the situation enough to convey that her marriage was under strain without delving into scandalous details. Anne, shocked, offered to fly in immediately, but Isabel asked her to wait. Let me see how things develop, she said softly. Raymond left early for the office, murmuring a half-hearted apology that she barely acknowledged. With him gone, Isabel gathered her thoughts. If the necklace indeed existed, if it was truly for another woman, she needed something more concrete than his half-lies. She needed indisputable proof. She also needed time to decide her next steps: confrontation, separation, or any chance of reconciliation for the baby's sake. That same afternoon, as Isabel paced the living room, she received an unexpected call from the jeweler Estate Jewelers, LLC. The man on the line spoke in a refined tone. "Good day, Miss S. Black. I'm calling to confirm your satisfaction with the custom piece Mr. Black commissioned. We'd love to ensure everything meets your family's expectations." Isabel's heart raced. "Oh, yes, about that. Unfortunately, I don't have it with me at the moment," she said, masking her turmoil. "Could you remind me of the details? I've misplaced the certificate." He sounded delighted to oblige. "Certainly. It's a unique emerald diamond collier, custom engraved. The design was intended as a personal message from Mr. Raymond Black to Miss Adrienne Levant." He paused. "I see here it's inscribed to A.L. My inspiration always." "We do hope she's pleased." Fire ignited in Isabel's chest, a swirl of betrayal and hurt. "Yes, of course. Thank you," she managed before hanging up, her breath short. The name, Adrienne Levant, the final confirmation that her husband had lied about the gift's purpose. A personal message, my inspiration always. A hush fell over the penthouse, broken only by her ragged breathing. She pressed a hand to her abdomen, silently apologizing to her unborn child for the stress. Then, gathering her wits, Isabel scrolled through her phone. Within minutes, she found what she sought, an upcoming gala event hosted by a luxury magazine, rumored to be the place to be for society's darlings. Adrienne Levant was listed among the confirmed attendees. She suspected that might be the stage where Adrienne would flaunt her new necklace. Without a second thought, Isabel dialed the event coordinator, an acquaintance from past charity functions. Putting on her most polished tone, she inquired about tickets, explaining that she and Raymond had intended to appear. The coordinator was thrilled, promising to place her on the VIP list. So be it, Isabel thought grimly, her mind made up. She was going to face Adrienne publicly if need be, and end this charade. Across town, Adrienne sipped champagne in her lavish apartment, admiring the emerald necklace in her bedroom mirror. The engraving glinted in the soft light, a testament to her triumph. She pictured wearing it to that upcoming gala, turning heads, letting onlookers speculate about her benefactor. She had no inkling that the rightful woman behind Raymond's last name had already discovered her identity and was preparing a move that would cast a bright, unforgiving spotlight on their clandestine affair. Raymond closed another stressful day at Blackstone Innovations, signing off on documents while ignoring texts from Adrienne urging him to meet for a drink. He was in no mood to fan the flames of that affair, especially after the tense showdown with Isabel. Guilt gnawed at him like a constant ache. Late in the evening, he returned to the penthouse. Instead of confronting him, Isabel calmly informed him she was attending a prestigious gala the following night, one of those events that typically demanded them to go as a couple. Raymond's eyes flickered. "I heard about that. I have a business trip the day after. Not sure if I can make it," he replied, uncertain if he wanted to face the social scene alongside her, especially under the weight of his secret. Isabel merely nodded, her tone unreadable. "That's fine. I'll go alone." She then turned on her heel, heading to her room without further explanation. Little did Raymond know that Isabel had discovered everything: the mistress's name, the engraved necklace, the upcoming gala. Nor did he suspect that she had meticulously planned her own form of justice. Instead, he spent the night tossing in the guest bed, mulling how to salvage their marriage without exposing himself fully. The fear of public scandal loomed large, overshadowing any sense of moral clarity. The next day, Adrienne was in her element, draped in a satin gown that accentuated every curve, the emerald necklace proudly displayed against her collarbone. She arrived early to the gala, relishing the camera flashes and the polite applause from fellow attendees. Whispers circled, who gifted her that piece? Some recognized its rumored connection to Raymond Black, though no one dared question Adrienne directly. She glided through the opulent hall, meeting acquaintances, savoring the power of their envy. Shortly before 8, Isabel stepped into the gala's grand foyer. Despite her advanced pregnancy, she wore a stunning, understated black gown that flattered her figure. Her presence commanded immediate attention. The hostess greeted her with wide eyes. "Miss S. Black, we didn't realize you'd be attending alone. Is Mr. Black joining us soon?" Isabel smiled politely. Uncertain, I decided not to wait. Without further elaboration, she swept through the crowd, guided by a quiet determination. The room hushed around her as she progressed, heads turning to see a poised mother, to be exuding a calm authority. Adrienne caught sight of the swirl of attention, and her heart froze. Isabel Black. She recognized the woman from media pictures, Raymond's pregnant wife, never a regular on the social circuit but admired for her grace. Adrienne's fingers tightened around the stem of her champagne flute. She hadn't anticipated Isabel showing up here, of all places. Drawing a breath, Adrienne adjusted her posture, the emerald necklace sparkling under the chandeliers. She told herself to remain composed. She had nothing to fear. Yet an uneasy flicker pulsed in her chest. Meanwhile, Isabel traced her gaze around the ballroom until it landed on Adrienne. Their eyes locked. In that charged moment, the crowd seemed to fade. Isabel noted the ostentatious necklace, glinting like a trophy around the other woman's neck. A wave of emotion surged: hurt, anger, resolution. She forced herself to walk across the polished floor, each step echoing like a drumbeat of destiny. It was time for the real confrontation, and everyone there, from the hush of onlookers to the paparazzi lurking in corners, would witness a scene no one would soon forget. The hush was palpable as Isabel approached Adrienne near the gala's centerpiece fountain. Cameras clicked discreetly from across the room. Onlookers sensed an impending drama, though none dared intervene. Adrienne stood taller, refusing to relinquish her composure. She offered a neutral smile, more for the benefit of curious eyes than actual warmth. "Miss S. Black," Adrienne said softly, inclining her head in a feigned gesture of respect. How lovely to meet you in person. Isabel's stomach coiled with tension. She forced a calm exhale, reminding herself she stood here not just as a betrayed wife, but also a soon-to-be mother determined to protect her dignity. Adrienne Levant, right? She replied, scanning the gleaming emerald necklace that nestled against Adrienne's collarbone. I hear you're quite well acquainted with my husband. Adrienne matched her gaze, a flicker of triumph dancing in her eyes. Yes, we've collaborated on certain projects. I understand he's spoken of me. Isabel's voice trembled with reined anger. He mentioned a business contact, but forgot to mention the personal nature of your arrangement. Her eyes flicked pointedly to the necklace. That piece is quite striking. Adrienne's lips curved. A gift from a generous admirer. She let the implication linger, no trace of shame, as though brandishing her conquest in plain view. Do you like it? In response, Isabel tilted her chin upward. Her pulse hammered, but she refused to show weakness. It looks expensive, must mean a lot to you. I wonder, does the engraving mean as much? A subtle twitch crossed Adrienne's face. Clearly, she hadn't expected Isabel to know about the personal inscription. Still, she maintained her veneer of aloofness. He wanted something special for me. I dare say he succeeded. The venom in her words was quiet but sharp. Isabel's mind flashed with a swirl of heartbreak and fury. She recalled the day she discovered the necklace's details, the swirl of betrayal. But in that moment, she tapped into a deep reservoir of resolve, one that had solidified the day she decided she would not be a silent victim. And for that, Isabel murmured, stepping closer, I have a small token for you, too. She reached into the small clutch at her side, withdrawing a folded document. Gently she pressed it into Adrienne's hand. The watchers craned their necks. Adrienne's brow furrowed as she unfolded the paper. A hush spread. Reading the words, Adrienne's face paled. She glanced up, meeting Isabel's unwavering stare. What is this? She whispered, her poised confidence suddenly shaken. Isabel's voice was steady, though her heart thundered. It's proof that the design, full payment, and final ownership of that necklace legally belonged to me, as Raymond used our joint marital assets to fund it without my permission. My lawyer had it filed today. She allowed a hint of triumph in her tone. So, legally, that necklace is mine. A wave of gasps rippled among the bystanders. Adrienne's eyes flicked down to the emeralds resting at her chest, then back to the paper. Rage and humiliation warred on her features. Isabel's next words landed like a thunderclap. I'm here to reclaim what's mine, Miss Levant. You're wearing my property. Please remove it now. Stunned silence enveloped the ballroom. All eyes were glued to the confrontation. Adrienne opened her mouth, but no sound emerged. Isabel waited, unwavering, resolved to see this bold move through no matter the cost or the scandal it ignited. For a moment, neither woman moved. The tension coiled tighter, an almost tangible force. The crowd held its collective breath. Then Adrienne's cheeks flushed with indignation. You can't be serious, she spat, voice quivering. Do you think a piece of paper is going to guarantee my right to that necklace? Isabel cut in, calm and firm. Yes, it does. I have the receipts and the legal claim that all major purchases from our joint account require both signatures. The store's transaction is incomplete without mine. You have no rightful ownership. A hush fell again. Adrienne's anger flared. She lifted her chin in defiance, one hand clasping the emerald pendant protectively. Raymond gave this to me. If you have an issue, take it up with him, she hissed. Isabel's eyes flicked to the side, noticing new watchers from the press, their cameras snapping more openly now. Perfect. Let them capture this, she thought, letting the entire world see how she would not be trifled with. He can explain his actions later, Isabel said softly. But you? You knew he was married. You took what you had no claim to. Now I'm demanding it back. Adrian's shoulders tightened. She glanced around, seeing no immediate ally. The last thing she wanted was a public scene, especially with reporters salivating for scandal. But her pride bristled at the notion of handing over her prized trophy. "This is absurd," she managed, searching for a graceful exit. Isabel refused to blink, even as her pulse pounded. She pressed on, voice resonant. "You can hand it over, or we can call the authorities right now. There are plenty of them in attendance. You know, security, detectives. How would you enjoy that headline tomorrow?" A ripple of dread crossed Adrienne's face. She realized that if she was arrested or forcibly removed from the gala for possessing stolen property, her social standing would be obliterated. The cameras around them clicked like the staccato of gunfire, capturing every flicker of her humiliation. With shaking hands, Adrienne reached behind her neck, fumbling with the clasp. Slowly she pulled the glittering necklace free. The emeralds caught the overhead light, shining brilliantly as if mocking her. She extended it toward Isabel with a trembling sneer, voice choked. "Fine," she said bitterly. "Take it. Enjoy your pathetic victory." Isabel gently took the necklace, a swirl of relief and heartbreak colliding in her chest. The press cameras exploded with flash, capturing the moment. She felt tears threaten, but held them back, reminding herself that she stood here for the dignity of herself and her child. Adrienne glared once more, then turned on her heel, vanishing into the crowd. A wave of murmurs enveloped the room, some sympathetic, some scandalized. Isabel clenched the necklace, inhaling shakily. She'd done it. She'd confronted her husband's mistress and reclaimed a symbol of his betrayal. Yet the final pang of grief soared through her. "This is what my marriage has come to." She spun around to see a new arrival, Raymond, having rushed in moments earlier, drawn by the swirling rumors of a confrontation. He stood at the edge of the crowd, face ashen, eyes wide with shock. The chaotic scene of cameras, gasps, and his pregnant wife clutching the necklace told him everything he needed to know. Isabel locked eyes with him, the raw betrayal etched across her features. For a beat, neither spoke. Then, with quiet dignity, Isabel turned and walked away, the seized jewelry in her hand, leaving Raymond to confront the uproar she'd ignited. Raymond pushed past the onlookers, heart pounding in his chest. He caught up to Isabel near the ornate double doors leading out of the gala, ignoring the barrage of flashbulbs and shouted questions from tabloids. "Belle, wait!" he called, voice cracking with desperation. She paused, turning to face him with tears shimmering in her eyes. The emerald necklace dangled from her fingers, a stark reminder of his betrayal. "What could you possibly say to me now?" she asked, voice unsteady. The hush in the hallway was deafening, the tension thick enough to suffocate them both. He swallowed hard, breath shaky. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I never wanted it to escalate like this." "Adrienne, don't say her name," Isabel snapped, tears slipping free at last. "You humiliated me. You humiliated yourself. And all for what? A cheap thrill? An ego boost? Did you think you wouldn't get caught?" Raymond's gaze dropped. He realized that in all his manipulations, he had never anticipated how savage the truth would be once it clawed its way out into the open. I was selfish," he admitted. "I couldn't stop it. The thrill, it blinded me. But it meant nothing, Belle. I love you and our baby. Please believe that." She laughed, a hollow sound echoing in the opulent corridor. "You call this love? Purchasing a necklace that costs more than some houses for a woman who, as it seems, was not content to remain in the shadows?" Her voice shook with hurt. "And I find out from a friend, then from a jeweler, about your secret gift. It's beyond betrayal." He tried reaching for her hand, but she recoiled, clutching the necklace protectively. "What do you want me to do?" he pleaded, eyes glistening. "I'll do anything to fix this." Isabel stared at him, heartbreak warring with anger. She thought of the vows they once exchanged, the future they'd envisioned, and how quickly he let desire overshadow the wife who carried his child. "I don't know if you can fix this," she whispered, "but here's what I'm doing. I'm taking this necklace, I'm going home, and I'm thinking about what's best for me and our baby." Her voice firmed. "And until I decide, I don't want you near me." Raymond's shoulders slumped in despair, a million regrets clawing at his mind. He realized he stood to lose everything: his marriage, the family he dreamt of, even the respect of the city's elite. "Please, Belle," she shook her head and stepped backward. Onlookers parted as she headed for the exit, leaving him standing alone, feeling the weight of his ruin. The paparazzi cameras flashed, capturing his ashen face, the picture of a millionaire undone by his own hubris. Outside, the city lights blurred in Isabel's teary vision. She clutched the necklace in her trembling hands, numb to the stares of passers-by. Yes, she had reclaimed what was hers, delivering a public blow to the mistress. But deep inside, she questioned whether winning this battle came at the expense of losing everything else she'd held dear. Back at the penthouse, Isabel found Harriet Brown, her longtime confidant, waiting in the foyer. Harriet had read online whispers about a dramatic confrontation involving Isabel Black. Worried, she rushed to Isabel's side unannounced. Isabel didn't bother hiding her tears as Harriet enveloped her in a comforting hug. She recounted the night's events, voice trembling with heartbreak. Showing Harriet the gleaming emerald necklace, she explained how she'd used legal documents to assert her ownership. Harriet's eyes widened in amazement. "That's unbelievably bold," Harriet whispered, glancing between the necklace and Isabel's anguished face. "I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself, but I'm so sorry you had to." Isabel slumped onto the living room couch, pressing a hand to her baby bump. "All I feel is emptiness," she admitted. "Yes, I confronted them, but I never thought my marriage would reach such a point. Part of me wonders if there's anything left to save." Harriet sat beside her, gently clasping her hand. "Raymond messed up in a huge way, but you don't have to decide your future tonight. Focus on your emotional well-being, on the baby. We can find you support, a counselor, a legal advisor, whatever you need." Outside, the media frenzy surged, fueled by spectators' cell phone videos and the paparazzi's coverage. Within hours, social media buzzed with the story of a pregnant wife reclaiming her adulterous husband's lavish gift from his mistress. The tabloids dubbed Isabel a quiet powerhouse, praising her calm display of strength. Others predicted a swift divorce, painting Raymond as a typical philanderer, undone by arrogance. Raymond, meanwhile, sat in his office at Blackstone Innovations, having fled the gala in shame. The crisis was personal, but also threatened to bleed into his business reputation. Calls from board members demanded an explanation. His brand was at stake. He stared at the phone, paralyzed by the scale of his mistakes. That single necklace became a symbol of betrayal, etched into the public eye. Adrienne Levant, humiliated beyond measure, retreated to her apartment, smashing a crystal vase in a fit of rage. She fired off furious messages to Raymond. "Look what you did, you coward. You left me to face that embarrassment alone." He read them with a heavy heart, ignoring her pleas for damage control. The illusions that had once fueled their affair were stripped bare under the glare of scandal. Late into the night, Isabel tried to rest, cradling her unborn child. She recognized Harriet's words as truth. She didn't have to choose her path just yet. But the raw ache in her chest wouldn't subside. She replayed the confrontation, her triumphant moment overshadowed by heartbreak. She'd never felt so alone, even as the city's headlines framed her as the unstoppable wife who refused to be sidelined. In the morning, she woke from fitful sleep, steel in her resolve. For the child's sake, she would see Raymond and hear his pleas on her terms. Harriet, upon hearing this, nodded supportively. "Only you can decide what's best," she said. "But don't let him manipulate you. You hold the power now." Isabel lifted the emerald necklace, feeling its weight, a reminder of her newly reclaimed power and the shattered remains of the life she thought she knew. By midday, Raymond mustered the courage to show up at the penthouse. Harriet let him in warily and joined Isabel on the couch for moral support. Raymond looked haggard, eyes bloodshot, hair unkempt, as though he hadn't slept. He carried a folder under his arm. He addressed Isabel first. "I know I have no right to ask, but can we speak privately?" She glanced at Harriet, who gave a supportive nod. Isabel inhaled, heart pounding, then motioned for Harriet to wait in another room. Harriet squeezed her hand and left. Once alone, an uneasy silence stretched. Isabel sat rigid, arms folded. Raymond's gaze flicked to her baby bump, and he visibly winced. "Belle," he began, voice thick with regret, "I'm sorry. I know that's not enough, but I need you to know. Adrienne was a mistake, an infatuation. It's over, I swear." Her lip trembled. "Is that all it was? A mistake? You risked our entire marriage, our future child's sense of family, for an affair that you now casually dismiss as an error in judgment." He hung his head. "I let temptation rule me. I fell for her manipulations, yes, but it was my choice in the end. There's no excuse." He lifted the folder, placing it on the coffee table. "These are documents finalizing all ties I had with Adrienne, business or personal. I'm shutting down any deals or branding consultations with her. I want no part of her in my life." She eyed the folder, skepticism etched on her face. "You think dropping her after the fact undoes the damage?" Raymond shook his head, tears edging his eyes. "No, but it's a start. If you'll let me try to rebuild trust, I'm ready to do whatever it takes. Therapy, full financial transparency, anything. I love you and our unborn child more than anything else." Isabel's resolve wavered. She'd once adored him beyond measure, believed in his integrity. Now, each word triggered a swirl of memories. The lonely nights, the suspicious phone calls, the sight of that necklace on another woman's neck, but also the love they'd shared, the life they planned. "How do I know this is genuine, not just panic over public humiliation?" He sank to his knees before her, ignoring his pride. "I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'll earn it if you give me a chance. If you want me out of the house until after the baby is born, I'll go. If you want me to sign a post-nuptial agreement guaranteeing your financial security, I will. Anything." Her eyes filled with tears, her hand instinctively resting on her belly. She could sense the sincerity of his remorse and also the reality of the heartbreak he'd caused. "I can't promise anything," she said quietly, "but for our baby's sake, I might be willing to see if you're truly changing." An exhale of hope fluttered from him. Gently, he placed a hand near her belly. "I want to be here for you, for our child. I vow to spend the rest of my life making up for this." She let his hand linger for a moment, tears slipping free. A fragile truce emerged, overshadowed by the mountain of trust that needed rebuilding. Outside the closed door, Harriet listened quietly, prepared to step in if Isabel's heartbreak overtook her again. For the first time since that scandalous night at the gala, a sliver of possibility emerged. Whether it would lead to renewed love or final parting remained uncertain. But Isabel decided to allow herself that sliver, if only for the child whose future depended so heavily on the choices made within these walls. In the weeks that followed, a precarious calm settled over the Black household. Isabel cautiously allowed Raymond back into the penthouse, although he remained in the guest room. Harriet stayed close by, ready to support Isabel through the emotional landmines. The press continued to speculate. Is the power couple reconciling or heading for divorce? Tabloid headlines ranged from "Betrayed Wife Takes Control" to "Raymond's Redemption, Is It Too Late?" Meanwhile, Adrienne Levant vanished from the city's social scene, rumored to have fled abroad to escape the shame of her public downfall. The scandal lingered, but new stories soon took center stage in the tabloids, overshadowing her fiasco. Though no official statements confirmed it, everyone presumed the affair had ended for good. Therapy sessions began for Raymond and Isabel joint counseling to address the betrayal's aftermath. Raymond poured his soul into each session, admitting his insecurities, the adrenaline addiction that spurred him into reckless situations. Isabel listened, sometimes stoic, sometimes sobbing, grappling with the pain of his deception. Slowly, empathy crept in. She recognized a flicker of the man she once fell in love with, hidden beneath layers of ambition and pride. Their unborn child served as a silent catalyst, encouraging them to face their wounds instead of running. Doctors' visits became a chance for small reconciliations, hearing the baby's heartbeat together, sharing ultrasound images. Isabel discovered that leaning on Raymond in those moments, while still fragile, was not entirely unwelcome. She could see his genuine efforts to be present, to atone for the nights he missed while chasing illusions. One evening, about a month after the gala incident, Raymond found Isabel on the penthouse balcony, gazing at the city lights. The emerald necklace was nowhere to be seen. She'd locked it away, uncertain if it symbolized heartbreak or personal victory. Gently, he touched her shoulder. "Belle, can I sit with you?" She nodded, and they sank onto the outdoor love seat. "You sure you want to be around me without walls separating us?" she asked, attempting a wry smile. He returned a rueful grin. "I know I'm lucky you're even letting me breathe the same air." They spoke softly about the future, about how they might handle co-parenting if Isabel decided not to stay in the marriage, about how love, once cracked, might be mended but never exactly the same. Yet, as the hours drifted into night, they shared a closeness reminiscent of their early days, layering tentative hope over the wounds. After a long silence, Isabel turned to him, eyes solemn. "I haven't forgiven you fully, Ray, but I see you trying. Keep trying." She took his hand, placing it on her rounded belly where the baby kicked. "Our child deserves a father who values family more than fleeting excitement." Emotion clogged Raymond's throat. He nodded, tears threatening. "I will be that father," he vowed softly. "And, hopefully, a better husband, too." Far below, the city sparkled, oblivious to their personal storms. In that fragile moment, with heartbreak behind them and a child soon to arrive, they found a faint glimmer of possibility. The road ahead was far from smooth, but they had begun its first steps together, for however long that path would remain shared. Thank you for witnessing Isabel's powerful stand against betrayal and her journey of hard-won resolve. When a single, scandalous emerald necklace threatened to unravel her marriage, she refused to remain silent or settle for half-truths. By claiming legal ownership, confronting her husband's mistress in public, and demanding accountability, she proved her strength as both a wife and expectant mother. While the heartbreak ran deep, her bold move forced Raymond to confront his own failings, and confront them he did, with sincere regret and a willingness to rebuild from scratch.
He was the dashing mogul every ambitious entrepreneur wanted to emulate. She was the poised, loyal wife who had stood by him from humble beginnings. No one would have guessed that behind the gated mansion's manicured lawns, betrayal festered like poison. Until one day, in a flurry of financial sabotage, he let his mistress cut off his wife's credit cards. It was humiliating, scandalous, and only the beginning of a whirlwind that would pit powerful business alliances against each other. In a boardroom confrontation that stunned everyone, the CEO himself stepped in, but not in the way anyone expected. Buckle up. This is the story of love, greed, and revenge. Jordan Alberts was not born into luxury. He grew up in a cramped one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of Milwaukee, where he learned to hustle by selling candy bars door to door at the age of 10. Over the years, Jordan's unwavering determination and charm propelled him into better circles. First at a local startup, then into his own tech company that caught the eye of an angel investor. By the time he was 35, Jordan was a self-made millionaire, a prominent figure on various entrepreneurial boards, and had connections with people like Mark Cuban, Bill Gates, and a few top executives at Google. His wife, Elizabeth Alberts née Wagner, had been with him through everything. They met in college at a small tech entrepreneur club meeting, both bright-eyed and dreaming of changing the world. Elizabeth came from a modest background, too. Her father was a retired auto mechanic, and her mother a homemaker. She'd studied communications with an emphasis on public relations, and it was through Elizabeth's network of contacts that Jordan first gained access to small local pitch events. While Jordan pitched his innovative software for automating small business tasks, Elizabeth made calls, arranged coffee meetups, and tried to capture the interest of potential backers. They married in a little chapel by Lake Michigan. It wasn't a lavish wedding, no star-studded guest list, no fancy reception at the Ritz. But to Jordan and Elizabeth, it felt perfect. A union built on genuine love, unwavering support, and a shared dream of building a life and a business empire together. Over the next decade, they grew from a modest condominium in Milwaukee to a stunning estate in Austin near Lake Travis, with a sweeping view of the water and rolling Texas hills. It was there at a philanthropic event organized by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation that Jordan's name landed on the radar of top-level investors. His company's smart automation technology was recognized for its potential to transform not just small businesses, but large-scale manufacturing and logistics. Soon after, Jordan's net worth skyrocketed from a mere $5 million to well over $200 million. For a while, everything was picture perfect. The marriage was strong, their personal synergy unwavering. Elizabeth handled some philanthropic duties, organizing events, acting as a goodwill ambassador for Jordan's brand, and forging new partnerships through her PR background. Their household staff adored them, describing Elizabeth as kind, gracious, and always mindful of the people around her. But money can be a seductive force, and success can open doors to darker temptations. Jordan began attending more exclusive networking events in Beverly Hills, New York, and beyond. Elizabeth was often at his side, but there were times she couldn't attend. Perhaps she was busy finalizing the details for a charity gala, or maybe she was simply burnt out from the unrelenting schedule. It was during these times, rare at first, then increasingly common, that Jordan got close to someone else. Her name was Ava Monroe. She was a rising star in the world of technology law, representing high-profile clients like Tesla, Amazon, and a few top-tier cryptocurrency exchanges. She had a reputation for being ruthless in negotiations, seductive in social gatherings, and unbelievably charming behind closed doors. The rumor mill started buzzing the moment Ava was seen at Jordan's table during a private dinner after a tech summit in Las Vegas. Elizabeth wasn't there. She had chosen to stay in Austin, meeting with a team of female entrepreneurs Jordan was mentoring. A few people whispered about Jordan's visible fascination with Ava, the way he leaned in whenever she spoke, how they clinked champagne flutes with an intimacy that suggested more than just business talk. No one knew for certain how fast or how deep it went, but soon the signs became undeniable. Lavish gifts appeared on Ava's social media, including a diamond bracelet, suspiciously similar to the ones Jordan's company had once gifted important clients. Photos emerged of Jordan and Ava at high-end restaurants in Manhattan, always carefully angled to obscure Jordan's face, though keen observers could still identify him by the sliver of a recognizable watch or the faint reflection in a mirrored wall. By the time the rumors reached Elizabeth, they were no longer rumors, but near-confirmed facts. She felt her chest tighten, her world spinning out of control. This couldn't be real. Jordan had always been a loyal partner. But the evidence was too compelling to deny. She confronted him in the privacy of their Lakeview mansion. At first, Jordan denied everything. Yet denial quickly turned into a half-hearted admission once Elizabeth presented him with photographic evidence. Like a skilled negotiator used to controlling deals, Jordan tried to manipulate the situation, insisting that Ava was just a business associate, someone he occasionally had dinner with. But Elizabeth saw right through it. She had always been adept at reading him. A chill settled over their once loving home. Elizabeth, determined to preserve her dignity, demanded they enter marriage counseling, or at the very least step away from high-profile events until they resolved their issues in private. Jordan nodded, providing non-committal answers. He had never liked therapy, never seen the point in discussing feelings with a stranger. He agreed to her wishes on the surface, yet beneath the facade, he continued his involvement with Ava, allowing the illicit relationship to take root. This was the calm before the storm. For soon Elizabeth's sense of betrayal would pale in comparison to the massive financial and emotional blow about to come her way. Weeks passed. Elizabeth tried to focus on her philanthropic work and personal projects, attempting to distract herself from the growing chasm between her and Jordan. When a local charity she sponsored invited her to discuss future donations, Elizabeth discovered something shocking. Her personal credit card was declined. Embarrassment washed over her in front of the unsuspecting staff. She tried another card. Sure, it must have been a glitch, but that too was declined. The staff politely suggested she call her bank, and Elizabeth excused herself with a polite smile, her hands trembling as she left the office. Elizabeth called the bank suspecting fraud or an administrative error. But the bank's representative informed her that both cards had been cancelled the previous week. Under their joint account, they were tied to Jordan's finances, and evidently Jordan had authorized the cancellation. It felt like a punch to the gut. Why on earth would Jordan cancel her cards without her knowledge or consent? They had never had major financial disputes. Elizabeth always had access to family funds, albeit responsibly. She dialed Jordan, but the call went straight to voicemail. She sent him several frantic texts. No response. Later that evening, Jordan came home exuding an air of tired disinterest. Elizabeth confronted him the moment he walked through the door. Under the chandelier's glow, which reflected in her tear-filled eyes, Jordan brushed aside her questions with a dismissive wave. "I needed to consolidate our finances," he said, removing his blazer. "You can use the joint checking account for a while." "No big deal, no big deal." Elizabeth's frustration swelled. "You cancelled my credit cards without even telling me what's going on. Are you punishing me for something?" Jordan's eyes flicked away nervously, and that was when Elizabeth realized he was lying again. The next words that came from his mouth were not only shocking, but also laced with a cruelty she never imagined he was capable of. "Ava suggested we revisit some of my expenses. She found that you were spending frivolously. It made sense to limit credit usage." Elizabeth's heart dropped to her stomach. Ava. That woman was now meddling in their finances. As if the affair wasn't enough, Jordan had allowed this mistress to encroach into an arena that Elizabeth believed was sacred, her own household stability. What is Ava doing reviewing my spending? Since when does your fling get to decide what is or isn't frivolous? Elizabeth spat tears, threatening to spill. Jordan made an attempt at a calming gesture, but his words only fanned the flames. She's helping me restructure. Her firm has great insights into corporate finances. This is about the business, Elizabeth. It's not personal. Not personal, Elizabeth recalled how intimately personal their marriage had always been. They built every aspect of their lives together, from small decisions about wallpaper colors to big entrepreneurial leaps that demanded everything from both of them. Now Jordan was shutting her out, consulting Ava instead. In a quavering voice, Elizabeth demanded, "Reinstate my cards. I am your wife. I have a right to our finances, and you know I've never been irresponsible with money." Jordan's face hardened with a new arrogance. "Not until we finalize our restructure," he said, referring to some nebulous plan Elizabeth knew little about. "I'll handle everything in the meantime." That moment, that cold exchange, was a harbinger of the bigger heartbreak to come. If Jordan was letting Ava control such details, what other aspects of their marriage was he willing to let her sabotage? As the days turned into weeks, Elizabeth discovered one more blow after another. The monthly allowance she used to cover household expenses had been slashed without explanation. The staff, including her personal assistant, was laid off. Bills began piling up, addressed to her name, but with no means to pay them aside from groveling at Jordan's feet. Friends and family started to notice. Elizabeth tried to hide her shame. She confided in her sister Caroline, who was enraged at Jordan. "This is financial abuse," Caroline insisted. "You should speak to a lawyer." Elizabeth shuddered at the thought. She still believed they could salvage their relationship, that Jordan would snap out of whatever daze Ava had put him in. Yet a small part of her whispered that maybe Caroline was right. Then came a fateful meeting at a hotel conference suite in Los Angeles, one that Jordan had insisted Elizabeth attend. It was a gathering of major tech moguls, including Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, who were rumored to be there to discuss new tech innovations in global logistics. When Elizabeth arrived, she quickly realized something was off. She saw Jordan in the lounge area, standing far too close to Ava, exchanging hushed conversations. Seeing Elizabeth from a distance, Jordan slipped away discreetly, leaving Ava behind. Elizabeth approached her husband with a forced smile. "I'm here," she said, desperate to maintain composure. "What's the plan?" Jordan gave a curt nod. "There's a closed-door session for the key players only. You'll have to wait outside." In the past, Elizabeth had always been included in these key player sessions as Jordan's partner and PR advisor. The subtle exclusion burned her pride. She swallowed her anger. "Sure, I can wait." After hours of waiting, she found Jordan and Ava laughing together near the bar. As she approached, Jordan's phone buzzed, and he stepped away. That was when Ava turned a chilling smirk on her face. "You know Jordan's a visionary," Ava said, swirling the wine in her glass. "He needs someone who can keep up with him on all levels: business, ambition, excitement." Elizabeth felt her face flush with anger. "I've been by his side for years. We built this together." Ava gave a theatrical shrug. "Maybe in the past. But times change. People evolve. I guess you were too comfortable." Elizabeth clenched her fists, biting back a retort. She was determined not to make a scene in front of such influential people. But oh, how she wanted to lash out to expose Ava for the home-wrecker she was. Ava flicked her hair behind her shoulder, noticing Elizabeth's agitation. "Things will be better if you accept it," she cooed, as if offering advice to a friend. Jordan's moved on in more ways than one. The finances are just the beginning. Elizabeth's body went cold. She realized in that moment how truly precarious her situation was. Ava was not simply a fling. She was positioning herself as a partner in Jordan's professional and personal life. The credit cards were just one step in what looked like a systematic campaign to push Elizabeth out of everything she and Jordan had built. Still, Elizabeth refused to crumble. She left the event quietly, but her mind churned with rage and heartbreak. It was time for her to take action. She needed to protect herself, her assets, and her dignity. Little did she know that as she plotted her next move, Jordan and Ava were preparing a financial ambush that would push her to the brink. Only fate and an unexpected intervention by a certain CEO would alter the course of their twisted game. In the days after the Los Angeles conference, Elizabeth attempted to consult with attorneys. She picked up a referral from a friend who once worked with a high-profile divorce lawyer in New York. The initial phone calls were sobering, with Jordan's empire being primarily under his name and her credit cards cancelled. She had limited liquidity to hire top-tier representation. Even so, Elizabeth pressed forward. She managed to scrape together some funds from a personal savings account. Jordan had no access to money she had set aside from her early PR consulting days. It wasn't a large sum, but enough to secure a preliminary consultation. During that consultation, her lawyer, Michelle Liu, a bright and empathetic but hard-hitting attorney based in Houston, laid out the hard truth. Financial abuse and infidelity are serious grounds for divorce, Michelle said, scanning through Elizabeth's financial statements. But if Jordan's funneling money and assets into new accounts under his own name, or shifting resources to places you can't see, we need proof, and we need it fast. Elizabeth swallowed. She recounted Ava's involvement, how she was effectively orchestrating the restructuring. Michelle's pen scribbled quickly over a notepad. You have a right to half of the marital assets, Elizabeth, but it looks like your husband is 2 steps ahead. We must move quickly. The plan was to gather evidence of Jordan's wrongdoing and file a court order to freeze marital assets, ensuring Elizabeth had a fair shot. But as they began drafting documents and rummaging through what records, Elizabeth had an avalanche of shocking details surfaced. Jordan wasn't merely cancelling credit cards. He was transferring stocks from their joint portfolio into an account under his newly formed trust. He had changed the authorized signatory details for a few of their properties, effectively locking Elizabeth out. He was also taking out lines of credit against certain properties, presumably to fund new ventures that, as Elizabeth suspected, involved Ava. The emotional strain weighed heavily on Elizabeth. She couldn't sleep, her appetite waned. Each day felt like standing at the center of a storm. Yet if she thought this was the worst of it, she was mistaken. One evening, after finalizing some documents with Michelle, Elizabeth returned to her mansion to find her key card didn't work on the electronic locks. Pounding on the door, she shouted for the live-in staff if any were left. Seconds later, the door opened slightly, revealing Ava's face. "Jordan's not here," Ava said icily. "You should call next time." Elizabeth's heart hammered. "This is my home. Get out of my way," she demanded, trying to push past. But Ava slid in front of her, refusing to budge. "He told me you're not welcome here anymore until the legal mess is settled," Ava sneered. "I have every right to ask you to leave." Elizabeth was trembling with fury. "You have no rights here. You're the mistress, not the wife." With a cold laugh, Ava stepped aside and pointed at Elizabeth's luggage haphazardly placed in the foyer. "Jordan left these for you," she said. He said to pack whatever else you need and let security escort you out if you refuse to leave. Elizabeth blinked away tears, her throat raw with outrage. She was being thrown out of her own home by the woman who had intruded into her marriage. That moment was a cruel epiphany. Jordan had not only cut off her finances, but now he was physically pushing her out of the place she had shared with him for years. Yet in all that darkness, a sliver of light emerged the next morning. Elizabeth received a phone call from a close mutual friend, Marcus O'Donnell, who worked with Jordan at a large tech conglomerate in Dallas. Marcus was someone Elizabeth trusted, an executive who had known Jordan since the early days. He had seen them build the company from the ground up. Elizabeth Marcus said, his tone urgent. "I don't know everything that's going on, but I heard from your staff that you've been locked out. There's a board meeting next week. Jordan wants to finalize some big decisions. If you can get to that meeting and talk to the chairman, maybe you can find some leverage." Elizabeth's breath caught in her chest. The chairman of this particular conglomerate was none other than famed CEO David Hartridge, known not just for his visionary leadership, but also for a strict code of ethics. Over the years, Hartridge had invested heavily in Jordan's business. He was the reason Jordan sat on that board. He's not the type to meddle in personal affairs, Marcus warned. But if Jordan's pulling stunts that compromise your share in the company, Hartridge might step in. He's big on fairness and hates scandal. It was the glimmer of hope Elizabeth needed. She thanked Marcus profusely. The plan was simple: attend the board meeting, confront Jordan in front of Hartridge, and present enough evidence of Jordan's wrongdoing to ensure the board and possibly the entire conglomerate would not stand for it. She spent the week gathering documents, bank statements, and text message screenshots that implicated Jordan in unscrupulous financial moves. Michelle Liu helped compile everything into a neat folder. "You need to be prepared for Jordan to lash out," Michelle warned. "He'll try to discredit you in front of the board." Elizabeth nodded her determination, overshadowing her fear. She practiced her speech, reciting it in the mirror of her modest hotel room, where she had temporarily moved. Heart pounding, she told herself that if there was ever a time to fight, it was now. Finally, the day of the board meeting arrived. Elizabeth, dressed in a sleek black pantsuit that radiated confidence. She walked into the corporate skyscraper in downtown Dallas, her chin held high despite the knot in her stomach. She spotted Jordan in the corridor, flanked by Ava and a couple of the board members. As soon as he saw Elizabeth, his expression darkened. "You're not supposed to be here," Jordan said, trying to keep his voice low. Elizabeth raised her chin. "I'm still an investor in your company. I hold shares. So yes, I'm attending the board meeting." Ava stepped in with a condescending smile. "Don't make a scene, Elizabeth. This meeting is for serious stakeholders." "I am a serious stakeholder," Elizabeth retorted, voice steady. "I'm your wife, still legally, and I'm half of this empire's foundation." Behind them, a tall figure approached CEO David Hartridge himself, a man in his 50s with graying temples and a firm handshake. He regarded Elizabeth with polite curiosity. "Ms. Alberts, I presume?" Elizabeth nodded, handing over her invitation papers and a letter from her attorney, which stated that she possessed partial shares. Hartridge studied the documents, then gave a curt nod indicating she was allowed to attend. Jordan shot Elizabeth a glare that spoke volumes. You have no idea what you're getting into. But Elizabeth did. She was here to preserve her dignity, her livelihood, and the legacy she had helped build. The meeting commenced in a sleek conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Dallas skyline. The board members sat around a large mahogany table, exchanging pleasantries about the upcoming quarter's projections. Jordan made a short presentation on a new partnership with a logistics firm, highlighting expansions and new contracts. A few board members clapped. Then came time for open discussion. Elizabeth raised her hand, clearing her throat. "I'd like to address some concerns about the financial structuring Jordan is proposing." She began, her voice reverberating across the silent room. Jordan's face reddened. Ava, seated beside him, tried to intervene. "We should keep personal matters out of board discussions," she said. But Elizabeth pressed on, raising the folder of evidence. "These changes aren't just personal," Elizabeth said. "They could affect company stability. Jordan is funneling resources into a new trust, making questionable decisions without transparency. I have documents signed by him with references to Ms. Ava Monroe, demonstrating a conflict of interest that could potentially compromise investor trust." A hush fell over the room. Hartridge's brow creased. "Jordan, is this true?" Jordan stood, scrambling for composure. "This is a personal matter. Elizabeth is overstepping her bounds." "She's not." Hartridge replied, his voice sharp. "If there's a conflict of interest that threatens the stability of our partnership, it's very much a board matter." Jordan's eyes darted between Hartridge and Elizabeth. For the first time, he seemed cornered, uncertain how to proceed. Ava shot Elizabeth a lethal glare, realizing that Elizabeth's boldness had forced the topic into official territory. The tension was palpable. Elizabeth's heart thumped so loudly, she was certain everyone could hear it. But she stood her ground. Continuing. "I also discovered lines of credit being taken against marital properties to fund expansions. These expansions could be legitimate, but the details are obscured. I have reason to believe Ms. Monroe is manipulating these finances for her personal gain." Murmurs rippled through the board. A couple members exchanged uneasy glances. Even those who might have sided with Jordan seemed rattled by the magnitude of Elizabeth's accusations. Hartridge steepled his fingers, evaluating the situation. "I propose we recess for 15 minutes. Jordan, Elizabeth, Miss Monroe, please step into my office." Jordan inhaled frustration etched across his features, but he couldn't refuse the CEO's request, not without causing a catastrophic scene. The three followed Hartridge into a glass-walled corner office, shutting the door behind them. In that tense, enclosed space, the real battle began. Elizabeth laid out her evidence on the polished table before Hartridge. Jordan tried to dismiss it all as a personal dispute, but Hartridge was no fool. He could see the potential for scandal, especially if a partner was using company infrastructure for personal vendettas. Throughout this heated exchange, Ava attempted to deflect blame. She portrayed herself as a legal advisor, merely suggesting financial moves, disclaiming any wrongdoing. But Elizabeth's carefully compiled documents suggested otherwise. Emails, text messages, and proposed legal documents bore Ava's digital fingerprints. Hartridge's expression darkened. "Jordan, this is unacceptable. If these documents are authentic, you've put your personal entanglements ahead of corporate responsibility. I won't allow it under my leadership." Jordan's face went pale. He tried to protest, to label Elizabeth's claims as overblown, but Hartridge had already made up his mind. "Until this is sorted out, Jordan, I'm placing your proposals on hold. We can't move forward with any major financial changes if they're under this sort of ethical cloud." Elizabeth felt a surge of relief, a faint vindication. While she hadn't resolved the core issue of Jordan's betrayal, at least the board wasn't letting him run roughshod over her financial future. But Jordan, cornered and embarrassed, lashed out in desperation. "You can't shut me down like this," he snapped at Hartridge, voice tight with anger. "I'm the one who made that original deal with your conglomerate. You need my innovation." Hartridge stood up, bristling at Jordan's tone. "I'm the CEO, and you've just made me question your reliability and integrity. Watch yourself, Jordan." Ava stepped closer to Jordan, placing a hand on his arm to calm him, but he shrugged her off. "You'll regret this," he warned Hartridge, then turned to Elizabeth. "And you made a fool of me in front of everyone." Elizabeth clenched her fists, refusing to cower. "You did that to yourself," she said, voice trembling with both fear and resolve. Jordan stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Ava followed quickly, her heels clicking on the marble floor. Hartridge sighed, looking at Elizabeth, who was holding back tears. "Thank you for bringing this to my attention," Hartridge said. "I'm sorry about your personal struggles, but I have to protect the board's interests. If you need anything, contact my office. I'm not a family court judge, but I won't let Jordan drag the company down." With that, Elizabeth let out a shaky breath. She had achieved a small but crucial victory, yet she couldn't shake the nagging sense that Jordan, humiliated and cornered, was far from finished. She left the skyscraper, stepping out into the bright Dallas sun, uncertain, but determined. Little did she know this chapter was only the start of a far more explosive confrontation, one that would involve security teams, sudden betrayals, and a twist that would bring Jordan himself to his knees. Life outside the mansion was lonely, but Elizabeth was thankful for the reprieve from Ava's manipulations. She rented a small apartment near downtown Austin and used what funds she had left to secure her basic needs, while Michelle continued to press for a financial freeze on Jordan's assets. In the weeks following the tense board meeting, Jordan went surprisingly quiet. No more legal letters arrived. No more credit lines were sabotaged. He didn't attempt to contact Elizabeth, nor did Ava. Instead, it seemed as though they had retreated into some silent fortress, likely strategizing their next move. Elizabeth took advantage of the lull. She reconnected with old friends and mentors, explaining partially at least what she was going through. While many were shocked, they offered support in the form of references, moral encouragement, and occasional leads for a stable job or a business partnership. Despite the heartbreak, Elizabeth discovered a renewed sense of purpose. She wasn't just a passive bystander in Jordan's world. She had her own capabilities, her own strengths. Slowly, she started consulting for small tech firms, using her communications and PR background to help them craft compelling pitches. It wasn't a fortune, but it was honest work that reminded her she could stand on her own 2 feet. Then one evening, she received a phone call from an unknown number. A crisp, professional voice greeted her. "Hello, Elizabeth. This is Patricia Carlson. I'm an executive assistant at Tesla, working under Elon Musk's leadership team." Elizabeth's heart thudded. She had met Patricia briefly at a tech conference in Berlin 2 years ago, but they'd never exchanged more than pleasantries. "How can I help you?" Elizabeth asked, mind racing. Patricia hesitated. "I might have information relevant to your predicament with Jordan. Let's just say some of our legal divisions have been observing Ava Monroe for a while, and some red flags have come up." Red flags. Elizabeth's curiosity flared. "You're investigating her?" A slow exhale from the other end. "Our major concern is that she's potentially engaged in insider trading, or at least something that veers close to it. She's been known to manipulate powerful men to gain inside info on deals, especially around new technologies. We don't have direct evidence, but we do know that she's heavily involved in your husband's finances. We suspect she might be siphoning resources for her own agendas." Elizabeth's mind reeled. This was bigger than a domestic spat. Ava might be leveraging Jordan's resources and connections to stake her own claims in the tech world. That explained the sudden shifts in finances, the new trust accounts, and the lines of credit. Patricia continued. "We want to bring her down, but we need more information. You, Elizabeth, might be in a unique position to gather that." Elizabeth tapped her fingers on the kitchen counter. "Isn't that something your legal team handles?" A rueful laugh. "Yes, but we need Jordan's direct involvement. We suspect he's unwittingly giving her access to confidential materials through corporate crossovers or joint ventures. If you can help us prove it, we can kill two birds with one stone, protect Tesla's proprietary data, and help you gain leverage in your divorce." Elizabeth considered the offer. It was risky. If Ava was truly up to something illegal, Elizabeth could expose herself to potential backlash, but the lure of finally getting the upper hand was strong. "I'll do what I can," Elizabeth replied cautiously. "But how do I communicate with you about this?" Patricia gave her a secure email address and instructions on how to encrypt files. "And one more thing," Patricia said, before hanging up. "People like Ava are cunning. She'll anticipate your every move. Don't trust phone lines or any device that Jordan has access to. Be careful." Elizabeth thanked her and ended the call. Adrenaline coursing through her. For the next few days, she scoured her digital archives for anything that might hint at insider information. Jordan's old messages about collaborations with major tech companies like Tesla or Amazon, documents that Ava might have manipulated anything that showed a trail of questionable activity. She found a few suspicious threads, forwarded emails from Jordan's corporate account that were CC'd to Ava's personal address. Attachments relating to Tesla's Project Next Gen battery were among them, though none of this was strictly proof of wrongdoing yet. Elizabeth compiled what she could and sent them to the secure email Patricia provided. In response, Patricia confirmed that these were valuable leads, but incomplete. "Keep digging," she urged, "and let me know if you get direct evidence of deals or monetary gains tied to these inside details." Meanwhile, Michelle Elizabeth's lawyer was preparing for a preliminary hearing to freeze some of Jordan's assets. She insisted Elizabeth come to court to testify about the financial abuse and the suspicious activities they had uncovered. But Jordan's side surprised them by agreeing to a partial freeze without argument. "That's strange," Michelle said, tapping a pen against the conference table. "Why would he agree so easily?" Elizabeth shrugged, perplexed. "Maybe he realizes fighting me will look bad in front of the board." But Michelle wasn't convinced. "I suspect he's preparing a bigger move. Be vigilant. He may have more leverage than we know." The next morning, Elizabeth received an unsolicited text from Jordan. "We need to talk, face to face." She felt a swirl of conflicting emotions, anger, sorrow, curiosity. But she knew she had to tread carefully. She agreed to meet him in a public place, a cafe near the courthouse, where she could keep the upper hand. When Jordan arrived, he looked tired, as though the weight of his troubles had worn him down. He offered a half smile, which Elizabeth did not return. "Liz," he began using the old nickname he once uttered, with affection. Things got out of hand. She crossed her arms. "You think?" He sighed, scanning her face for warmth that was no longer there. "I want to settle this amicably. We can discuss spousal support, property divisions, everything. No need for a long, nasty court battle." Elizabeth let the silence hover. She wasn't naive enough to believe him at face value. Amicably. Are you telling me Ava is out of the picture? Jordan's shoulders tensed. This is about you and me, not her. Look, maybe I got carried away with Ava's advice. She's a brilliant attorney. She's manipulative, Elizabeth cut in sharply. He brushed the point aside. Regardless, I'm willing to compromise, but I need you to lay off this insider trading nonsense. It's reckless. You're endangering my reputation. Elizabeth realized then that Jordan knew she'd been snooping into his communications. Perhaps Tesla's legal inquiries had begun reverberating in his circle. She saw the fear in his eyes. He was worried, if not about losing her, then about losing his empire. You made me the enemy, Elizabeth replied, in a hushed, trembling tone. When you let your mistress cut off my cards and throw me out of my home. Jordan looked away, shame flickering on his face. I didn't handle that well. But you have to understand the pressure I'm under with these deals. She waited, letting him squirm. Then he continued. You'll get a fair share. I promise. I just need you to stop meddling in my professional affairs, especially with Tesla or any other major collaborators. You'll ruin me if you do. A bitter laugh escaped Elizabeth. She thought of all the times she had stood beside him, protecting him, representing him before powerful players, forging alliances that were crucial to his success. Now he was pleading for her, not to ruin him. The irony nearly choked her. Before she could respond, Jordan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and muttered a soft curse. I have to go, he said, throwing some cash on the table for their untouched coffees. Elizabeth watched him leave a mixture of pity and disdain swirling in her stomach. It was obvious he was desperate, but was this a genuine attempt at reconciliation, or a ploy to keep her from uncovering more incriminating information about Ava? That question lingered as she returned to her apartment, drained. However, a new email from Patricia waited in her inbox. It contained an attachment, a partial timeline of suspicious trades linked to accounts rumored to be controlled by Ava Monroe. There were large bets placed on Tesla's stock ahead of public announcements. Gains in the tens of millions. This is huge, Elizabeth thought. If she connected these trades to emails or calls between Jordan and Ava, it could be the smoking gun. And while Elizabeth had no intention of going to the feds on her own, Tesla's legal team could bury Ava, and by extension, Jordan's complicity, if he was involved. Elizabeth clutched her phone, anxiety coursing through her. She was walking a razor's edge. One false step, and Jordan might retaliate more fiercely, or Ava might strike. But a successful strike against Ava could free Elizabeth from this entire ordeal, giving her the leverage to secure a fair divorce settlement, or even land Jordan in deeper trouble, depending on his role. She reached for her phone to text Patricia when it buzzed in her hand. A call from an unknown number again. Tentatively, Elizabeth answered. A man's voice greeted her calm and steady. Hello, Ms. Alberts. My name is Gregory Shaw. I'm part of CEO David Hartridge's legal counsel. He asked me to follow up regarding the situation with your husband. Elizabeth's heart skipped. Hartridge's legal counsel. We understand from Mr. Hartridge's conversation with you that there might be unethical or even illegal behavior in play. Gregory continued. The board is concerned about potential liability if Jordan's personal dealings spill into our corporate structure. We can't risk another scandal. Mr. Hartridge would like to assist you discreetly. Elizabeth exhaled slowly. She was on the cusp of powerful alliances forming against Jordan and Ava, But the more people got involved, the more dangerous it felt. Gregory concluded, "We'll be in touch with your lawyer. If you have any crucial evidence, Mr. Hartridge suggests you keep it secure. He wants to avoid a public meltdown, but he's prepared to do what's necessary to protect the company's interests, and that includes supporting you in your legal disputes if it comes to that." Hanging up. Elizabeth felt a measure of validation. The cracks in Jordan's seemingly untouchable world were growing. Perhaps justice would prevail. Yet as she prepared to finalize the next round of documents for Michelle, a gnawing worry kept her awake at night. Cornered animals are the most dangerous, and Jordan, though once gentle and loving, had shown he could be ruthless when threatened. She braced herself for the storm that was surely coming. The next time Elizabeth saw Jordan in person, it wasn't by chance or a carefully arranged meeting. It was at the headquarters of Hartridge's conglomerate in Dallas. A sudden emergency board session had been called to address urgent corporate matters, and Elizabeth, having been notified by Gregory Shaw, arrived prepared. She walked into the reception area, her heart pounding with anticipation. Michelle Liu had insisted on accompanying her, but at the last minute she was called to handle a crucial filing. Elizabeth went alone, relying on the moral support from Gregory and the knowledge that Hartridge wanted the truth on record. Jordan was already inside the boardroom with Ava, who paced like a clad tiger. When Elizabeth entered, they both snapped their heads in her direction. Ava's glare could have sliced glass. Jordan's face was inscrutable, tense, angry, but also tinged with fear. Hartridge arrived moments later, trailed by a few board members and legal advisors. He wasted no time in stating the purpose of the meeting. "Allegations have come to my attention that Ms. Monroe has been engaging in stock trades leveraging proprietary information from Jordan's company and potentially from our own collaborations. We need to clarify the truth. Now." Gasps and murmurs filled the room. Ava's jaw clenched. "This is preposterous," she began. "We demand to see your proof." Hartridge nodded to one of his advisors, who distributed printed documents, timelines of suspicious trades, tied to accounts flagged by Tesla's legal team, along with correspondences that Elizabeth and Patricia had pieced together. Jordan snatched a packet from the advisor. His eyes swept over the page's color, draining from his face. Ava's lips thinned, and for a moment Elizabeth could see the faintest flicker of panic in her eyes. Hartridge pinned them with a stern gaze. "Jordan, you've been a valuable partner. I don't want to see your personal life derail your professional standing, but this is bigger than your marriage. Insider trading is a federal crime, and if Ms. Monroe is using your business resources to pull this off, you're implicated." Ava recovered quickly. She placed a hand on Jordan's arm, her voice smooth. "This is a misunderstanding, David. Anyone can align stock trades with corporate announcements. It's called speculation." Elizabeth decided enough was enough. She stood. "Speculation is one thing, but forwarding private emails, entire business proposals, and preliminary press releases is not speculation. I've seen the messages. You're literally discussing the best times to execute trades based on announcements that hadn't been made public yet." Ava whirled on Elizabeth. "You have no legal standing to claim that. You're just a scorned wife trying to sabotage Jordan and me." Elizabeth's blood boiled. "We'll let the evidence speak. There are even time-stamped emails from Jordan's corporate account sent to your personal email, Ms. Monroe, discussing upcoming expansions and product launches. Then trades were executed in your name or trusts linked to you within hours." A hush followed. Jordan's hands shook slightly. He seemed torn between denial and guilt. After all, the evidence was damning. If he denied it outright, he'd appear foolish. But if he admitted his involvement, he risked criminal charges and the wrath of the board. Hartridge leaned forward, his voice firm. Jordan, I need answers. Were you aware of these trades? Jordan stared at the table, words refusing to form. Finally, he managed Ava said it was all above board, that it was just normal investing. Ava let out a short laugh, but it sounded hollow. If you want to scapegoat me, Jordan, think carefully, she warned. We made certain deals in your name as well. Your signatures are on plenty of documents. The entire boardroom seemed to hold its breath. Hartridge addressed one of his legal advisors. Have we sent this to the SEC? Not yet, the advisor responded. We wanted to confront them first. Jordan shot to his feet, panic etched on his face. No need to escalate it. We can handle this internally. If I undo the trades, repay any gains, repay tens of millions of dollars, Hartridge asked. And that would just be the tip of the iceberg if the SEC digs deeper. This is out of our hands if they launch a formal investigation. Elizabeth watched Jordan unravel. This was the man who had once been so composed, so unstoppable. Now he was cornered, sweat beading on his forehead. Ava, too, looked like a wild animal backed into a corner, eyes darting around the room. At that moment, a building security guard appeared at the door, knocking softly. Mr. Hartridge, you asked for security on standby, he announced quietly. Thank you, Hartridge replied, his tone like steel. I believe we might need you. Ava's eyes flitted towards the door, then back to Hartridge. She adopted a pleading tone. David, you know me. I've handled legal matters for some of the biggest players in the industry. I would never do anything to jeopardize your trust. Hartridge's face remained stony. I trusted Jordan, not you. And this evidence suggests you're at the center of a major ethical breach. If you don't have a verifiable explanation for each of these trades and how you obtained insider information, I have no choice but to protect the company from liability. Suddenly, Jordan snapped. Fear twisted into anger, and he pointed a trembling finger at Elizabeth. You did this. You ruined everything because you couldn't handle that I moved on. Elizabeth steadied her breathing, preparing to reply. But Hartridge cut in calm yet firm. Don't blame her for your poor decisions. You let your personal affair become a corporate liability. Something in Jordan cracked. He lunged toward Elizabeth as if to grab her documents or her phone, an irrational move likely spurred by desperation. But he never made contact. In a blink, the security guard stepped forward and intercepted Jordan, gripping his arms. Stand down, sir, the guard said, voice authoritative. Jordan struggled, but the guard was a solid wall of muscle. Ava shrieked. Let him go. This is a private matter. Hartridge shook his head, anger coloring his features. You just attempted to assault someone in my boardroom. Security remove Mr. Alberts from the premises. Jordan's eyes widened in disbelief. You can't do that. I'm on the board. Not anymore, Hartridge said grimly. I can and I will. You're suspended pending an internal investigation. Once that concludes, we'll determine your status. Now go and take Ms. Monroe with you. A second guard stepped in, guiding Ava toward the door as she protested threatening lawsuits and defamation claims. But her words rang hollow, overshadowed by the looming specter of an SEC investigation. Elizabeth stood off to the side, stunned by how quickly it had escalated from a tension-filled meeting to an outright meltdown. As Jordan and Ava were led out, Jordan craned his neck to shout at her, "You'll pay for this, Elizabeth. Don't think you've won." But the threat carried little weight now. In that moment, Elizabeth felt the mixture of triumph and sorrow that comes with toppling a man she once loved. She hadn't wanted to see Jordan destroyed, only to protect herself and the life they had built together. But Jordan's actions and Ava's ambition had forced her hand. Hartridge dismissed the board members, soon after instructing his legal team to cooperate fully with any investigations. He turned to Elizabeth with a sympathetic frown. "I'm sorry you had to endure this, Miss Alberts. I assure you we'll handle it lawfully. Whatever personal or marital disputes remain, I hope you find closure." Elizabeth gave him a small nod. "Thank you. I appreciate your fairness." She gathered her documents and left the skyscraper, the bright Texas sun, striking her face as she stepped onto the street. The entire drama replayed in her mind. He let his mistress cut off my cards, but the CEO called security on him. She thought a bitter yet satisfying sense of irony spreading in her chest. She wasn't naive enough to think it was over. Legal battles would continue, depositions would be taken, and the divorce was far from final. But in this pivotal moment, she had taken back her power, standing against the storm that Jordan and Ava had unleashed. And for the first time in months, Elizabeth felt a glimmer of hope that she might in the end be free from their tyranny. In the weeks that followed, word spread like wildfire. News outlets picked up on rumors of insider trading linked to a high-profile tech investor, hinting that a major name was under investigation. It didn't take long for the rumor mill to connect the dots to Jordan Alberts and his mysterious attorney-turned-partner, Ava Monroe. Elizabeth watched from the sidelines, inundated with calls and messages from acquaintances, reporters, and sometimes even old college classmates she hadn't spoken to in years. She ignored most of them, preferring to let the legal process unfold without adding fuel to the media frenzy. Jordan, under immense legal and financial pressure, attempted to strike a deal if Elizabeth agreed to keep quiet and not testify against him or Ava. Regarding insider trading, he would give her a generous divorce settlement. The settlement included alimony, a hefty lump sum, and properties that would secure her financial future. However, Elizabeth refused any agreement that required her to lie or withhold the truth if subpoenaed. Nonetheless, she allowed her lawyer Michelle to work out a fair settlement that didn't involve perjury. Eventually, Jordan capitulated, realizing he had to salvage what he could from the marriage and business meltdown. The final settlement granted Elizabeth a significant portion of the assets, the mansion by Lake Travis, ironically, and a sizable share of Jordan's original tech startup. Meanwhile, Ava disappeared from the public eye, her reputation in tatters. Rumors surfaced that she'd fled the country, perhaps to avoid legal repercussions, while others suggested she was hiding out in some luxury villa, waiting for the storm to pass. Either way, her days of meddling in Jordan's finances seemed to be over. Elizabeth didn't celebrate Jordan's downfall. She quietly grieved the end of a marriage that had started in love and partnership, yet she also felt relief and a renewed sense of self. She returned to the Lake Travis mansion, deciding whether to keep it or sell. The sweeping views of the water brought back memories, some of which felt like knives to her heart, others that warmed her soul. She began a new chapter in her life, leveraging her PR skills to start a consultancy focused on helping women entrepreneurs navigate both business and personal challenges. She named it Phoenix Rose Consulting, symbolizing rebirth and resilience. To her surprise, she found more joy in championing other women than she ever did standing behind Jordan at glitzy galas. She kept in touch with Patricia from Tesla, who occasionally updated her on the ongoing investigations. Whether Jordan faced criminal charges depended on further evidence. But at least for Elizabeth, the immediate threat to her assets and well-being had lifted. David Hartridge reached out, once inviting Elizabeth to a dinner with the board, presumably to mend fences. Elizabeth politely declined. She had no desire to relive the tension of board meetings or navigate corporate politics, where her personal life became public fodder. She was grateful for Hartridge's stance, but preferred to build her future away from the chaos. In moments of solitude, Elizabeth reflected on the entire ordeal. She'd once believed that love, loyalty, and shared ambition could conquer anything. Yet she also realized that unchecked power and ego could corrode even the strongest of bonds. Jordan's betrayal had been a painful lesson, but it set her free to discover her own strengths and a life not tethered to someone else's rising star. Yes, heartbreak lingered, and healing was an ongoing process. But Elizabeth found herself waking each day with a sense of purpose. She'd gather with female founders at local co-working spaces, host workshops on media relations, and offer moral support to those feeling overshadowed by bigger players. Each time she saw a spark of confidence ignite in another woman's eyes, she felt her own sense of wholeness return. In time, Elizabeth would finalize the divorce, sign the deeds, and officially start over. A sense of calm settled within her, like the slow, tranquil waves on Lake Travis at dawn. Her story, the humiliating card cancellations, the public meltdown, the mistress's meddling, would become a cautionary tale, one she shared sparingly, only when it might help others. Despite the scars, Elizabeth refused to let bitterness define her. She chose growth empathy, and a belief that with the right support, anyone can rise from the ashes more formidable than before. Just as Elizabeth thought she had reached stable ground, fate tossed her another curveball. A month after the settlement, Michelle called her urgently. "The feds want to depose you," she said. They uncovered new evidence Jordan may be involved in deeper crimes, bribery, money laundering. Ava might have orchestrated a network. Elizabeth's stomach dropped. Jordan never mentioned anything like that. They've found offshore transactions and documents with his signature, Michelle said grimly. 2 days later, Elizabeth sat in a stark federal office, flanked by Michelle and 2 serious agents. They questioned her about Jordan's finances, Ava's role, the card cancellations, and philanthropic events that may have masked backdoor deals. Elizabeth stuck to the facts. She neither speculated nor dramatized. One agent, impressed, said, "You've been very helpful, Ms. Alberts. This case is significant." She left emotionally drained but relieved. She hadn't been dragged down with Jordan, but the storm wasn't over. Whispers followed Jordan was hiding at a secluded ranch, dodging the press. Ava had vanished. More subpoenas were issued. An indictment loomed. Elizabeth stayed focused on her consultancy, channeling stress into helping other women navigate business pitfalls. Her story, once painful, became a symbol of warning and strength. Then came the headlines: Jordan Alberts indicted for insider trading, fraud, and obstruction. Ava was named but still missing. The scandal rocked the tech world. Elizabeth issued a single statement. "I'm saddened by Jordan's choices. I've cooperated fully with authorities and continue to rebuild my life." Eventually, Jordan pled guilty to a lesser charge, offering a tearful courtroom apology. Elizabeth watched from home, tears in her eyes, not from triumph, but quiet grief for the man she once loved. Still, she understood consequences had to follow actions. That night, beneath the soft moonlight over Lake Travis, Elizabeth allowed herself one last cry for the past that died and the hope still waiting ahead. Life has a way of testing our fortitude when we least expect it. Elizabeth Alberts began this journey as a devoted wife, only to see her world upended by betrayal and financial sabotage. Yet what she lost in illusions, she gained in unbreakable resilience. Standing up to powerful forces and calling out wrongdoing isn't easy, but it's sometimes the only way to protect your dignity and your future.